Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the main event.
So today, we are going to talk about a really powerful, but honestly not very well-known tool for veterans. It's called the Clear and Unmistakable Error motion. Now, if you've ever had a disability claim denied by the VA, I don't care if it was last year or 30 years ago, you're going to want to stick around for this.
Just think about that for a minute. You get that letter, that final denial. You miss the one-year window to appeal, and you just figure, well, that's it. Game over. But what if it's not? What if there was a legal backdoor to challenge that final decision, no matter how much time has passed? Well, guess what? There is. And that's exactly what a Q motion is. Honestly, the best way to think about it is like a legal time machine. See, this isn't just about asking the VA to take another look at your case. A Q motion literally goes back in time to that original decision and corrects the mistake, just as if it never even happened. Okay, so let's get specific. What exactly is a clear and unmistakable error, or CUE? Well, it's a very particular, and I have to really stress this, a rare type of mistake in an old VA decision. It's an error of fact or law that was so blatant, so obvious, that it gives you the power to revise that old decision, totally bypassing that standard one-year appeal deadline. Now, this right here is probably the most important thing to understand. A CU motion revises an old decision. It does not reopen the claim. And that might sound like just words, but the difference is absolutely massive. See, reopening a claim just starts things over with a new effective date, which is basically today. But revising a claim with a CU, that means your effective date goes all the way back to when you first filed. And you can see just how powerful that is. Let's say the VA denied your claim way back in 1992. Then, much later, you discover they made a huge mistake. So here in 2024, you file a CUE motion, and it's successful. Your effective date for benefits isn't 2024. No, it snaps all the way back to 1992. We're talking 32 years of potential back pay. And if you think that's just a hypothetical, check this out. In a real case, a CUE motion was filed on a decision from 1989. The vet was granted a 20% rating, effective all the way back then. The result? A back payment of around $126,000. From one motion, the financial stakes here can be absolutely enormous. Okay, so it sounds amazing, right? A time machine for your VA claim. But here's the reality check. The VA makes this tough. There is a very, very high bar for proving a CUE. You can't just file one because you didn't like the decision. It has to be something more. This quote really nails it. The mistake has to be so obvious, so undeniable, that anybody looking at the file, then or now, is forced to agree that the original decision was wrong. There's no room for debate. It has to be, well, clear and unmistakable. So every single Q argument has to pass this three-point test. First, you have to show there was an error of fact or law. Like the VA flat out ignored a diagnosis that was right there in your file. Second, and this is a big one, you have to prove it using only the evidence that was in the record at that time. And third, you have to show that if that mistake hadn't been made, the outcome would have been totally different. And let me just say that second point again, because it is the absolute golden rule of CU motions. I cannot stress this enough. You cannot submit new evidence. Not a single new doctor's report, no new statements from your buddies, nothing. You are locked into the file exactly as it was on the day that old decision was made. Your entire argument has to live or die on that original record. So let's make this real. What is and what is not a CU? Well, if the VA ignored a diagnosis that was already in your service records, that might be a CU. But just you disagreeing with the VA doctor's opinion? Nope. That's not a CU. Arguing that the VA failed to apply a specific regulation that was on the books, that's a potential CU. But arguing that you just have a different interpretation of what that rule means, not a CU. You see the pattern? It's about objective error, not a subjective disagreement. All right, so you're listening to this and thinking, maybe this applies to me. How do you even begin to find out if you have a case? Well, it's time to become an archaeologist of your own VA file, digging for that one specific error that's been buried for years. Your path starts right here. First thing, you've got to get a full copy of your VA claims file and become an expert on what was in it at the time of that old denial. You need to see what they saw. Then, you hunt for that specific, undeniable error. Once you find it, you draft your argument, carefully explaining how it meets that three-part test we talked about. And finally, you file it with the exact same VA office that made the original mistake. And here's a really powerful legal idea that you can use. The VA actually has a legal duty to give your file a sympathetic reading. What that means is they can't just look at what you wrote on the application form. They are required to review all the evidence and consider any potential claims that evidence might point to, even if you didn't explicitly claim them. And look, this isn't just some nice idea. This is a legal standard that's been backed up by federal courts. So if your file back in 1992 clearly had evidence pointing to, say, a psychiatric condition, but you only filed a claim for your knee, the VA had a duty to consider that psychiatric claim too. If they didn't, well, that could be your clear and unmistakable error. So as we wrap this up, it really leaves you with one big question. For a lot of veterans, the key to the benefits they deserve right now might not be in some new medical exam. It could be buried in a decades-old decision, sitting in a file, just waiting for someone to take another look. Could an old file cabinet somewhere hold the key to your future? It's definitely something to think about.
A special thank you to MarketUS.com for furnishing us this information. You can reach them at MarketUS.com or call them at 954-636-3232. Before we go, this deep dive was created by the MarketUS.com team. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. It's right below the subscribe link.